Hey friend, Nicole here. How is your heart today? There's this story that I've played out in my life. This woman, she wakes up, she's carrying too much. Nothing even happened that morning, but her mind is so full. Before her feet even touch the ground, she checks her phone. She reads his headline, and oh my goodness, her chest is tightened. She sees a message that feels kind of sharp. She thinks about a conversation she's been avoiding. She looks at the clock and immediately says to herself, I'm already behind. And that one sentence, yes, it seems small, but then the day starts moving around that sentence, around that thought. Because I'm already behind doesn't just stay a sentence, right? It becomes a feeling. And now her body feels rushed. Her mind feels pressured. Now she snaps at her children for moving too slowly for school. Now she answers an email with tension in her tone, right? Maybe she avoids a task because she feels so overwhelmed that she feels like she can't even do it well. And then by 12 o'clock, by noon, the whole day just feels heavy. And she begins to think that life is the problem. But maybe it didn't just start with life. Maybe it started with language. And that is what I want to talk to you about today, because unfortunately, that was the rushed, frustrated, chaotic life I lived. And I know I'm not alone. So today I want to invite you into a conversation about the fruit of your mouth. And I want to talk about the way that words don't only describe your life, but they quietly help produce outcomes in your life. And I also want to introduce and walk you through a framework that's become this really important framework to me in my life because it helps me connect my words to my life with clarity. So go ahead and grab your notebook and let's dive in. We're going to take our time. We're going to move a little slowly. This is a training. And let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to give you the framework first from the start so you can follow along with me, okay? All right, so words create feelings, feelings impact your choices become your outcomes become your daily lived experience. That's the framework. This has been true in my life, and it's been true in the lives of those that I speak to, coach, and teach. My words can shape what I feel, what I choose, what kind of outcome I end up living in. And my words can also trigger that same flow in the people around me. And that could be really weighty when we recognize that. But it's also very helpful because once we can see the pattern of our language, we can begin to steward it. All right. So let's begin at the beginning. What are words? So words are more than just sounds, more than just labels, more than communication tools. Words carry meaning. Okay. They hold interpretation. They create this frame around your experience and they give shape to what something means in your mind, in your body, and in your life. Okay. So words are like these containers for thought, but they're also more active than that. Your words can direct attention. They assign value. They suggest what is safe, what's threatening, what's possible, what's hopeless, what's mine to carry, and what's not mine to carry. So I want to say this one more time, write this down. And I want you to think about the words that have impacted you or are impacting your life every single day. So words direct your attention. They assign value to something or someone or an experience. They suggest what's safe, what's threatening, what's possible, what's hopeless, what's mine to carry, and what's not mine to carry. And this is why language matters so much, because we don't simply live out our life events. We live in what our language tells us those events mean. And this is why I believe scripture puts so much weight on the tongue. Language and word is serious to God. In Proverbs 18:21, I always say this. It says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. That verse isn't just this poetic exaggeration. You're going to hear this verse often. It's telling us something that's practical. Words have consequences. That's deep. They produce fruit. They create movement. They influence what grows in your life. And I don't mean in that shallow self-help kind of way. I mean in a deeply mental, emotional, and spiritual kind of way. So think about this. A word can calm a nervous system or activate one. A word can dignify a person, or diminish them. A word can strengthen clarity or cultivate confusion. Am I right? A word can create courage or reinforce fear. So when I say that words have power, they have formative power. They are forming something. They have the ability to shape the emotional climate that we live in. Let's not forget how God created the heavens and the earth in Genesis. Okay. Hebrews 11:3 says, through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by what? The word of God. He said, let there be. And guess what? There was. By his word, worlds were spoken into existence. And while he only has the power to speak things into existence, he gave us the power to shape the experience of our existence with language. Are we being good stewards of that? And that leads me to the next part of the framework. Words produce feelings. Your thoughts produce feelings. So let's say I keep telling myself I'm failing, or this is too much, or I can't trust myself, or something's going to go wrong. All right. So those words don't just stay in your mind. They now move into the body. They create what we call emotion. They stir up anxiety or pressure or dread or self-doubt or heaviness or defensiveness. But listen, in the same way, if I keep telling myself I can slow down, God will help me, I can tell the truth and still be okay, I can take one step today, these words are going to produce this different inner experience. You see what I'm saying? So no, you may not experience instant relief, but you will feel more grounded. You may not feel this instant peace, because sometimes trust and belief, it takes time. That's just the reality. But you can definitely experience a little more space to breathe. And don't forget that this does take practice. So reforming and refining your language is going to take time. Aligning your language with God's language is going to take diligence on your part. But if you are willing, you can do it. Words create feelings because words create meaning, and meaning always touches emotion. This is one reason why people could hear the same situation described two different ways and have two different, completely different emotional responses. So, for example, one person says, this is a disaster. Another one says, this is disappointing, but we can work with it. Same situation, different language, different feeling. And feelings matter. Why? Because feelings shape our choices. This is the next part of the framework. Choices. Words create feelings, and feelings create choices. So if my words produce pressure, guess what? I'm more likely to make pressure choices. If my words produce fear, I'm more likely to make defensive choices. So if my words produce shame, then I'm more likely to withdraw or to hide or to procrastinate or over-explain or overcompensate, right? If my words produce peace, then I'm most likely to respond with calm, wisdom, and clarity. If my words produce dignity, I'm more likely to choose from a place of self-respect instead of panic. If my words produce courage, I'm more likely to move instead of remaining stagnant. So the thing is that this is our choice. We get to choose. You get to choose your words, your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. And here's something else to consider. So many choices that look behavioral on the outside are actually connected to language on the inside. Excuse me. Why is this important to understand? Because sometimes we try to fix our choices without examining the emotional patterns that these choices and actions are rooted in. And that emotional pattern is usually fed by what? By words. Excuse me. So then our words shape and create and produce our outcomes, excuse me. So if I keep choosing from pressure, then I may create burnout, reactivity, and exhaustion. If I keep choosing, is your choice, from fear, I may create delay, disconnection, control, or missed opportunities. If you keep choosing from shame, you might create cycles of hiding or self-sabotage or isolation. If you keep choosing from truth or peace or groundedness, then you might create healthier boundaries and clearer decisions and gentler relationships and more grounded leadership in your life and maybe in your business. So the whole entire framework, it works like this. My words shape my feelings influence my choices, my choices help to create my incomes, my outcomes. I keep saying that. And that's the fruit of my mouth. And I think that one of the hardest things to admit is that sometimes I'm living in an outcome that has been watered by my own repeated language. I'm going to say it again. One of the hardest things to admit to ourselves is that sometimes I'm living in an outcome that has been watered by my own repeated language. Life is complex. Hard things happen that words didn't create. But in those places, language still shapes how I relate and respond to what's happening. Okay. So now I want to turn the lens outward for a minute, because this framework doesn't stop with me. Here's the thing that gets me. My words can trigger the same flow in the people I speak to. This is important in close relationships, in parenting, in marriage, in friendship, in leadership, in community, in teaching, right? If I speak words of contempt, the other person may feel shame. Shame may influence them to shut down or defend themselves or hide or retaliate. That choice then may shape the outcome of our relationship and even perhaps their lives. If I speak words of dignity or wisdom or respect and truth into a person, then they may feel seen or corrected without being crushed. And they may be able to respond with honesty. Again, that's going to change the outcome. This is why tone matters so much. So my son might hear me say, "What's wrong with you?" And he might feel small or confused or even defective. That feeling could shape his choices for many, many years. We've all had that experience. But if my son hears me say, "Let's slow down and look at what happened," he might feel safe enough to reflect or redirect and grow in a specific situation, right? Same moment, different language, different emotional fruit, different long-term output. Language impacts in real time. This also is true in your marriages. So if I tell my husband, "Man, you never listen to me," that's going to produce one kind of feeling. But if I say, "Babe, I want to share why this matters to me right now," That's going to produce another more supportive feeling. Could you feel the difference, right? In the language and the tone. This also pertains to friendships. You're too sensitive. That's going to produce one kind of outcome in your friend. I can see this landed hard on you. Let's talk about it. That's going to produce another outcome, right? In a leadership situation, do better. That's going to produce one kind of emotional climate. And let's sit down and let's look at what needs to improve and how we can strengthen it together. That's going to produce another, right? So the questions I have to ask myself when I speak are: one, is what I'm saying true? Two, is this the language likely? What is this language likely to produce in the person receiving it or hearing it? Those are important questions, but they have changed things in my life and in my relationships. And these questions can change things for you as well. Are you willing to be more mindful of your words? Excuse me. If this is relatable, write mindful in the comments because I want to hear what you have to say as well. This is a conversation. So, how do we cultivate awareness and the influence that our words have on others? I believe it starts with slowing down long enough to watch the fruit. What's the fruit? Watch faces, watch posture, watch the energy in the room after you speak. It's called discernment. Watch what kind of conversations your language creates around you. Watch how people around you, whether or not they become more honest or more defensive or more fearful or more grounded or more withdrawn or more open. Sometimes we don't recognize the impact of our words because we're so focused on our intention. But intention is not the only thing that matters when we speak. Impact matters as well. So another part of awareness is learning to ask better questions. Excuse me, y'all, after we speak. So feel free to write these down. What did my words make that moment mean? Did my words create clarity or confusion? Did it communicate dignity and integrity and growth? Did it sound like fear or control or contempt or anxiety or wisdom? And then there's a deeper work of listening to your own tone before you even open your mouth. Because usually the words that you speak to others have been living in you first. And that's real deep. That was a word from somebody, for somebody. Listen, if my inner life is filled with pressure, it's going to leak into my speech. If my mind is crowded with fear, my tone is going to start carrying that. If I'm rehearsing harshness with myself, I may end up speaking it outwardly to others. That's why guarding the inner life matters so much. Which brings us to the next part of this conversation. All right. If you're here for this amount of time, thank you. How can we guard our minds from the influence of other people's language and the words we externally experience? This is one of my favorite topics. This matters because we are spoken to all day long by people, by headlines, by political commentary, by advertisement, by social media, by opinions, by family systems, by culture, by praise, by criticism, by what is spoken to our face and what is typed on a screen, by religious systems. And every one of those words is trying to shape meaning in us in some way. And we have to understand this. Be aware of the words you're listening to, my friend. Some language is trying to make you afraid. Some language is trying to make you reactive. Some language is trying to make you outraged. Some language is trying to make you feel insecure. Some language is trying to make you buy something, perform something, or do something, or prove something, or compare yourselves to others. We have to be aware. Some language wants you to conform to systems and ideas and thought constructs that God didn't ask you to participate in. So guarding your mind doesn't mean that you're pretending that words don't affect you. It means that you're becoming a more discerning gatekeeper of the words that you allow to take root in your heart. Type in "that's powerful" if that hit. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." That means that what I allow in, that matters. What I dwell on matters. What I keep rehearsing in my mind matters. What I speak from my mouth matters. So I guard my mind by noticing what kind of language lives in the residue in me, or leaves residue in me. So if a certain media always leaves me agitated or suspicious or depressed, then guess what? You need to be honest about that. I need to be honest about that. If certain relationships constantly fill your inner world with accusation or confusion or pressure, you need to pay attention. This is called discernment. If political language keeps pulling you into fear or rage, hello, you need to ask what it's producing in you. Listen, we have to notice. We have to become aware, y'all, of words. If someone else's words become your inner voice for days, you need to notice that too. Guarding the mind isn't only about avoiding the bad things. It's also about filtering what you hear through truth. So not every spoken word deserves agreement. It's okay to just sit and look. Not every opinion deserves to take up residence in your mind. Not every criticism deserves ownership. Not every fear-filled message needs to be repeated. How does this look like? How does this look in real life? Sometimes guarding the mind just means turning something off. Sometimes it is taking a break from what's too loud, from a voice that's too loud. Sometimes it's writing down the sentence that hit you and asking, is this true, God? Sometimes it looks like answering fear-filled language with grounded language and scripture. Romans 12:2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." That word renew is so important. It just simply means to be made new. But this verse proves that the power of God, through the power of God, we can change our mindsets, our thinking patterns, and our perspectives. And we can receive new mindsets, new thinking patterns, and new perspectives that align with the character of who God is. Now, isn't that a beautiful promise that we can be renewed? But again, we have a choice, and we have to be willing to release old mindsets before God can replace them. So when God renews my mind, it means I can't just let every outside voice shape me and expect my peace to remain intact. Okay? I have to return to truth again and again on purpose. I have to practice renewal by hiding God's word in my heart. I have to become more intentional about what gets repeated in my inner world. We have to do the work. All right. So how do we steward our words in a way that shapes better outcomes for ourselves and for others? Again, it begins with taking responsibility for the full framework, not just for my words, but for what they produce. All right. So instead of asking the question, what do I want to say? I want to encourage you to also ask, what feeling is this likely to create? What choice might that feeling lead to? What outcome might grow from that? And that one shift, y'all, can definitely make us much more careful and much more compassionate human beings. And it's certainly done that for me. So after we take responsibility, Then we practice replacing careless language with language that is both true and life-giving. Not fake, but clear and nourishing. Here's another example. So instead of saying I'm a mess, maybe the truer language is I feel overwhelmed and I need to slow down. Instead of saying you never listen, maybe the truer language is I need to feel heard in this conversation. I just want to give you some examples here, right? Some applicable examples. Instead of saying this is a disaster, maybe this becomes this is hard, but we can respond wisely. Instead of saying I can't handle this, maybe it becomes Lord, I need support and rest and clarity for this. And that kind of language is going to change your feeling, and your feelings are going to change your choices, and your choices are going to change your outcomes. So as we close this conversation, I believe we can all benefit from asking this simple question more often. What am I watering with my words? Am I watering fear? Am I watering defeat? Am I watering shame? Am I watering urgency? Am I watering dignity? Am I watering courage? Am I watering peace? Am I watering truth? Because words are seeds in the sense that they don't stay still. They multiply, they produce, they grow fruit. I think about one of my favorite verses where Jesus said in John 6, 6:6, I think, the words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. I come back to that verse often because his words are life. Isn't that beautiful? So if I want my language to become more life-giving, I need to spend more time with words that are alive. Come on. I need to let his language recalibrate my language. I need to let his truth become so familiar that it starts shaping my natural responses. This is not about becoming a religious performance. I have to become this I don't have to become this spectacular orator with perfectly dictated words. No, we have enough of that, right? It's more about becoming aware and rooted in everything that my mouth says and making sure that it does not offer negativity. Philippians 4:8 tells us what to think and how to speak. Take time to study that. That's your homework assignment. This is your simple invitation and your challenge today. And thanks for being here with me for so long. Listen to your words. Listen to the ones you speak to yourself. Listen to the ones you speak to the people you love. Listen to the words you let in from outside voices. And ask yourself, what feelings are these words producing? What choices are these feelings influencing? What outcomes might I be helping create without recognizing it? And what is this producing? This is not for shame and judgment. This is a question for stewardship. Because the fruit of your mouth is real and it's lasting. And if words can help shape outcomes, then they are worth tending to with greater care. Don't you agree? So I gave you many reflective questions during this conversation, and I invite you to write on them and see what shows up for you. But here's one more practice that will help you apply this to your life in real time, because I really want you to understand this language thing. Write down one sentence that you've been repeating lately. And then ask yourself, what feelings does this produce in me? I want you to really, really get this framework. What choice does that feeling tend to lead me toward? What outcome might that create if I keep rehearsing it? And then ask one more question. What would be more true, more life-giving, and more aligned with peace? It's a small practice, but it can change the whole tone of your day. And sometimes that's where a different life begins, right? Not with this dramatic breakthrough, but with one truer sentence. So if you made it to this point of the video, I'm proud of you because I know that you are going to continue to do this work of stewarding the language of life. I'm Nicole. Thank you for your time. And always remember to speak life, my friend. And if this training resonated with you in some way, then please like this video and share it to support somebody else. Subscribe to this channel if you want to be the first to know when future language trainings like this are uploaded. And until next time, take what you need and take good care, my friend.